it feels like a distant memory of when Villanova was at the top of the basketball world just a few years ago. Kyle Neptune comes in with some really great rosters the last 2 years, and things just don't come together. Last year, I was in love with the roster. I bet them to win the title in the summer, and there were some moments of highs, but way more lows, and it was disappointing to see. So we'll see what happens this year. Christian and Nick here with Tommy Godin. Is it Godin or am I saying it wrong?
Nope, you got it.
Tommy Godin, who co-founder Road to the Garden, writes for VU Hoops. Tommy, tell me, is there a reason to believe that with this roster compared to the last two, just Kyle Neptune entering year 3, that Villanova can take a jump and get back to the tournament this year?
Yeah, I think so. I can spin it in a way that, I mean, when you look at this roster, I don't think there's any doubt that this roster compared to last year's, I mean, losing guys like Brendan Hawson and Hakeem Hart, TJ Bamba, Tyler Burton, all those guys, I think they're more talented for sure, but I think the pieces fit better on this roster, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's my thing going in. Like, I'm a Villanova guy too. Ever since I came onto the scene, I've loved Villanova and Jay Wright and everyone. But I mean, to me, this is like the most uncertainty since when really. I mean, probably over a decade at least. And I like what you said about the pieces because like with Enoch at the 5 now and sliding over Dixon to the 4, like that's something different that we haven't had the last 2 seasons under Neptune. But like you said, the talent the last 2 seasons compared to now, it's just not even close in my opinion. And now is like when Neptune like really has to coach and like we have to see X's and O's and stuff. What can we expect, just kind of from the starting 5 this season and, just give us the outlook really.
Yeah, I think one thing that we can take from last year's team and move over to this year's team is they never gave up. Even when times were tough, even they were in a pillow fight with DePaul in New York in the Big East tournament that Justin Moore bailed them out of. And then they take Marquette to overtime the very next game. They never give up. They never lose that spirit. They never stop playing hard. So I think Kyle Neptune in that regard will have his guys playing tough and playing for him. If you're not going to play hard, you're not going to be on the floor for this Villanova team. Yeah, what you mentioned, I mean, the outlook for this year is going to be interesting. Enoch Boakye at the 5 paired with Nana and Njoku, I think is going to be an interesting dynamic, moving Dixon over to the 4. He's wanted to play there for a couple of years. And I think the past 2 seasons, especially this offseason, he's really worked on his lateral quickness. I think defending the 4 was always a bigger problem than playing the 4 on offense on this Villanova team. So I think that move's going to pay dividends for him, not only for this team, but for his professional career as well. But why I have a little bit more confidence in Villanova than the rest of the people. 1, I'm biased. 2, is because I like these freshmen a whole lot. Matt Hodge, Josiah Mosley, Malcolm Thomas. I wouldn't be surprised if he redshirts, but he's electric. I don't know if you guys watched Hoops Mania, but he won the dunk contest as a freshman. He's one of the best athletes Villanova's had in their program in quite some time. But Josiah Mosley and Matt Hodge are 2 incoming freshmen that are way too mature for their age. They play well above their years on both sides of the floor. They're physical defenders. Both of them can score inside and out. I'm really looking forward to both of them coming in.
So I look at this last year. What frustrated me was, it felt like offensively things were. I agree. People played hard and they were well coached defensively. Like I was there when I met you and when they played at Wells Fargo when they took UConn down to the wire and played really good defense against UConn. And like, what frustrated me was there was just like something that just felt so forced about offense. Like a lot of guys just didn't feel comfortable. And I think they brought in a lot of talent, but like whether it was Burton or Bamba, even Mark Armstrong, like I just felt like guys didn't look super comfortable in the offense. And it just was just kind of clunky at times. And this year you don't have as many guys, especially, these freshmen are interesting, but of the 1, 2, 3 starting of Jameer Brickus, of Wooka Poplar, of Jordan Longino, I think these guys have a more seamless fit together of like you said, of how they will play together. Wooga's obviously more of a shooter, can create a little off the bounce. Longino has kind of underwhelmed from what he was supposed to be when he came here, but he shows flashes of being a guy that at a 6'5" as a bigger body, as a guard who can create, who can create shots for himself. And then Brickus hasn't played at the highest level of college, but he still put up really good numbers in the A10. So with that being said, how are you feeling about those three? And what do you think about, a jump from Longino or Brickus? Do you feel confident in Brickus' ability to jump up to the Big East? And do you think Longino is a guy who can really increase his averages? Wooga to me seems like the most we know who he is of those guys, but talk to me more about Brickus and Longino.
Yeah, Wooga's an NBA player, and I'll leave it at that. The other two, for Longino, his entire career, all 3 years he's been at 4 years he's been at Villanova, he's been hampered with injury. I think this offseason he's been fully healthy. He's been able to, not fully healthy. He obviously got injured in New York City for the Big East tournament, but for the most part of this summer and this entire offseason, Longino's healthy, and that's going to be big for him because you're right. You have seen flashes of what he was. And as for Brickus, going back, I remember talking to you last year with talking in regards to Mark Armstrong. It just looked like he was caged up. He plays so fast, and in Villanova's offense, it looks like he was being held back a little bit. And I think Mark's obviously supremely talented. That's why he's in the NBA or the NBA's developmental program now. But with Jameer Brickus, he's an undersized guard, but he's scrappy. He can play defense. I think that'll translate to the Big East level. He's also a true point guard. Mark was not a true point guard. Villanova didn't have a true point guard last year. Jordan Longino was bringing the ball up. Mark Armstrong, Tyler Burton sometimes was bringing the ball up. Even the year before, Cam Whitmore would bring the ball up on offense and then go play the 5 on defense. So I think this is the first time in Kyle Neptune's era that he's had an actual true point guard. Jameer Brickus is the best facilitator that Kyle Neptune has had in his tenure here at Villanova. And I do think that will transfer. If the scoring and if the defense will transfer is to be seen. He's definitely tenacious on defense. I would like to see it against some of these other schools in this conference before I make any rash statements. But I do think being a facilitator and a primary ball handler is going to be big for what Kyle Neptune wants to do on offense.
Yeah, for sure. And those guys aside, my 2 biggest X factors for Villanova this season is going to be Enoch at the 5, and then I think Tyler Perkins can be really good as the 6th man on this team. He transfers from Penn, but like Villanova fans saw last season, he had a smooth 22 against you guys. He's a good player. I know Enoch's just a beast out in the Mountain West, rebounding and blocking shots. Not so much a score, but besides that, what else can you tell about those 2 guys?
Yeah, I know about Tyler Perkins out of Penn. I learned about him very early in his career, like you mentioned, dropping 22 as a true freshman against Villanova, taking down they were ranked at the time, but taking down a ranked Villanova team in their house was huge. And going back to my previous point with ball handlers, we saw last year at Penn when Clark Slackert went down a little bit, it was Tyler Perkins that took over as the primary ball handler, and he averaged in the high teens in those games where Clark Slackert was out for scoring. He's not going to have to do all that, which I think lower volume will equal more efficiency. He's a great defender, so he's going to get a ton of playing time. I project him to come off the bench, but he's going to be – I agree with you. I think he is going to be this team's X factor. I think he's a do-it-all kind of guy, and I'm really excited about him. As far as Enoch Boakye goes from Fresno State, 7-7 last year, I think that he originally was at Arizona State, then he went to Fresno State, and he was a higher touted, I don't want to say highly touted, but he was a higher touted high school prospect and never really panned out at Arizona State. Kind of found his feet a little bit at Fresno, and the same thing goes here as it went with Tyler Perkins. I think lower volume is going to equal higher efficiency. If he knows all he has to do in his role is protect the rim, rebound, and finish lobs. And if that's all he does at Villanova, it will be a successful year for him in his role.
Chris Parker transfers from Alabama where he redshirted. Don't know much about him. Is he a guy that you expect to be a factor this year?
He's in a boot right now. So, I mean, coming into redshirting all of last season, coming into this year, I believe he has a broken toe right now. He's in a boot, did not participate in Hoops Mania. I don't know when he's projected to be back from that injury, but committing to Villanova as late as he did, I mean, learning the Villanova style of play isn't like going to, like an Alabama or Duke or Kentucky, one of those schools. Villanova plays very differently than a lot of these other big programs. So I think learning the Villanova way, diving on the floor for basketballs, their intricate defensive sets, coming in that late is going to be tough for him. I think if he's a contributor, it's going to be more towards the end of the year. But I mean, he's 6'9", and he can handle the ball a little bit. I know I was reading some quotes from Nate Oates, who said he got bigger, stronger, and faster during his redshirt year at Alabama. He was a Villanova recruit. He had Villanova in his final 3 coming out of high school, and it was really a toss-up at his commitment back when commitments weren't spoiled all over the Twitter timeline, and you really didn't know where these guys were going. But he held Villanova in high regard, and he finally lands here on the main line. So I think it's going to be a process with Chris. They're definitely going to ease him into it, but I think as the year goes on, his contributions will only get bigger and bigger.
One other guy I had a question about, I think he's from Bulgaria, Alexander. Is there anything with him this season, or is he more of like a project piece?
Gavaliugov.
Gavaliugov, yeah, yes. He goes by Sash or Sasha.
That works.
Yeah, I really like this kid. Now, I don't know how his play style is going to work at Villanova. He's kind of a flashy passer. He makes big plays, got a handle on the ball, just spin move, dribble moves. He is special with the basketball in his hand. I don't know how much or to what extent they'll kind of tone that down at this level. But this kid, he was an NBA prospect, and you saw what he did this summer. He had an outstanding summer. I think he's going to be a bigger contributor than people think. I could see him, in the beginning because he signed later, not as late as Chris Parker, but definitely later on in the cycle. So I think 7 to 10 minutes early and then increasing his role a little bit later on is going to be appropriate for him. But I mean, if they brought this up earlier, talking to Christian about Mark Armstrong, but if they kind of let him off his leash and let him do what he does, he's going to be something that we haven't seen on the main line in quite some time. He's electric with the basketball.
So is he the backup point guard for this team?
I mean, I guess you can quantify. I mean, it's really positionless. If I had to pick a backup point guard, I'd probably say it's Tyler Perkins. But he would fit that description as a point guard, like a traditional point guard. Yes.
All right. Here's something I want to ask. Last year was not the exact numbers, but it was pretty public that Villanova had some deep pockets when it came to the transfer portal. That they were spending some cash, even on a guy like Lance Ware, who didn't do a whole much of anything. So I guess my question is, other than Wooga, who was a NBA guy, like he was at NBA workouts this year, and I assume Eric Dixon got some money to stay. But from what you've heard, was the investment from the booster-led NIL collective less because of frustration, with Neptune and with the lack of, per se, ROI on their investment last year? Is that correct? What is just the overall status with the NIL collective and just generally the booster support of Kyle Neptune, of how much time he has to build this thing at Nova?
Yeah, I'm not close enough to the program to speak. I mean, it's an ever-changing landscape in this day and age of college basketball. I don't know enough about what money's coming in, what money's coming out. I can say that there was plenty of money for these guys in the transfer portal this offseason. Like you mentioned, Eric Dixon got handsomely paid, as did Wooga and some others. But no, I don't think that the booster held back at all for his ROI, for lack of a better word. Yeah. So no, I don't think it had anything to do with that. In
terms of the support, though, and just the general climate of the Villanova fan base, do you think people are optimistic that Kyle Neptune can still be the guy to get Villanova to where Villanova basketball needs to be? how long is his leash? You talked about this freshman class that you're really excited about, but we've seen in this era, you can have a freshman have a great year as a developmental piece on the bench, and then they're out of there. So having good culture and having a coach that's still there is important for that. So how would you describe just kind of the climate around Kyle Neptune right now?
That's $1 million question, right? So with Kyle Neptune, I don't know the specifics of what's going on behind the curtain, but I will say this. There is a certain expectation that Villanova holds pretty highly. And if that expectation is not met, they will do whatever they have to do to meet that expectation. If Villanova does not make the tournament this year, I don't think that bodes well for Kyle Neptune's future. I would not expect him back if they do not make the tournament this year. It will be 3 unsuccessful years. And in this day and age in basketball, I mean, everything's moving so fast. You can't just stand by a coach idly and underperform with the amount of resources that they have. But with Kyle Neptune, I mean, I think it's a unique case. I think the Villanova's athletic director just recently this month moved from Villanova. He's now the athletic director at Northwestern. So I don't know if that has any bearing positively or negatively in Kyle Neptune's corner. A new athletic director has not been named yet. So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, but I will say this. If Villanova does not make the tournament this year, it does not bode well for Kyle Neptune's future on the main line.
Yeah, I agree. Tournament or bust, especially, being Jay Wright's successor after, that he made 17 out of 18 tournaments, 0 for 3 is just, it's not a good look, man. And I would be impatient as well.
I also want to talk a little bit more about Wooga. I've been a champion of Miami. I've just loved the way they've played. I've always been, I was very disappointed in the last year, but I've just really liked what Coach L has done. And Wooga's a guy that definitely grew in his time there. A very good athlete, someone who really his 3-point percentage was super low I think it was a freshman, and it's been much higher as he's a sniper from there now. And my perception of his move to Nova is them saying you're going to get to take a ton of threes here. You have NBA upside. You can be maybe that secondary creator off the ball with Brickus. He's definitely not a point guard though. He's definitely more of a wing. And sometimes last year I heard from my Miami people that Wooga missed some games and they played better sometimes because sometimes he does try to do a little too much or the ball can stick. So I think it's a very interesting transition of getting him into that, what you speak of, the Villanova system of a very specific style of play. Have you heard anything about how that transition's going of, having Wooga be a guy that plays off 2 feet, no wasted dribbles, pump faking, maybe even a little back to the basket game? Have you heard anything about his, assimilation into the Villanova way?
Yeah, I mean, coming into Villanova, I mean, I mentioned it twice already, but I think Eric Dixon is going to be the main scoring option. I think they're going to run this offense through Eric Dixon. So I think that's going to take a lot of pressure off Wooga coming in. 13, 5, and 2 last year at Miami for him. He's someone that I think I don't want to say transcends the Villanova way, but he's someone that you just got to let Wooga play Wooga's game. I don't think he's going to be held back in Villanova's system as much as, Mark was or some others were. If Kyle Neptune wants to win now, they're going to let him be him. They're going to let Eric be Eric. And I think, again, for the third straight player, that less volume will equal more efficiency for him. I know that he is progressing through the summer extremely well. All reports that I've heard from practice is he's looked into everything like the guy that we were supposed to get from Miami, which we couldn't say about every player during this time last year during these practices. So it's definitely a positive sign so far this summer for him.
There were a lot of times I would watch Nova last year, and you're decently happy with the looks. They're not amazing looks, but they were generating good looks from 3. But Hausman was really the only guy you could count on to consistently knock him down. Guys like Bamba in waves and Dixon, we're not going to let down. But Wooga's a guy that those looks off the catch and shoot, even if a guy is closing out on him, that is a good shot and that he will make a lot. So last thing I just want to talk about is I think Dixon's move to the 4, which we have touched on, is really just the way college basketball is. more teams trying to play small, but then, you have some teams who really want to play bully ball underneath. And like Dixon's a guy that can give you a little boat. Like, I think he can be such a matchup nightmare for some teams, being able to play on the block and to be able to play on the perimeter. So what was the, I guess, progression of, I think you said that he wanted to be playing the 4, for the last couple of years, and kind of had to play the 5, especially when Lance Ware, another stray. Like, it's like there was just such a massive drop off when he would go in. It's like, and they didn't really fit together. Any concerns about the fit of, when Dixon's at the 4 and you have a non-shooter at the 5 in terms of spacing, or just how excited is Dixon, I guess, to be in this role that feels more comfortable to him?
Dixon has, for the last couple of years, made a ton of sacrifices that aren't mainstream for this team. He's advanced every year. He's done everything that they've asked him to do. And him coming back, I mean, this is a legit Big East Player of the Year candidate they have coming back. It's definitely one of the more under-the-radar moves because I think everyone expected him to go pro this offseason. He's definitely excited. He's definitely excited to be playing the 4. It's where he played in high school. It's where he thrived in high school. I think the fit's going to be good. I think there's a common understanding between Enoch Boakye, Nana Njoku, and Eric and the coaching staff. I think that they're all on the same page. They have a role and Eric has a role. I'm throwing another stray at Lance Ware, but I mean, every time he was on the floor last year for Villanova, bad things happened. He and Eric did not gel at all, and Eric was kind of forced to play the 5. And I don't think that understanding was there with Lance Ware last year. That's why he's at UTA this year. So I think this year everybody's on the same page, and I think that that's going to pay dividends for Eric Dixon and the Wildcats down the road.
Sorry, last thing. I don't know much about Njoku. Is he good?
He's athletic, yeah. He was a 3-star, 4-star prospect out of Delaware. He showed flat. I mean, before Lance Ware got hurt, or before he got hurt last year, when he went in instead of Lance Ware, there was a noticeable difference. He would rim run. He would grab boards. He's super athletic. His first 2 years at Villanova, he got hurt, kind of the same thing as Jordan Longino. And I know last year he was hurt as well. So he's got experience under his belt. He knows the Villanova way of playing basketball, which is a huge advantage over Boakye coming in. And then last season, he was the talk of the offseason. Last season, I went to Villanova Media Day last year, and everybody had nothing but good – every single person I talked to had nothing but good things to say about Nana Njoku. And a lot of them were proud of him and his commitment to this team. He's taking it seriously, and it's going to pay dividends for him. I think like I mentioned, when he came in last year instead of Lance Ware, he was noticeably better at the 5. So I'm hoping for health. He's not 100% healthy right now as we speak, which is so unfortunate for him. He's been riddled with injuries, but I think if he can get back and be good by the beginning of the year, he's going to be a legitimate option off the bench playing the 5.
Quick positive note before we head out, and I'll ask you this, Tommy. How has Villanova been the number 1 free throw percent team in the country the last 3 years? What's the secret, man?
Got to recruit good free throw shooters. The actual secret for them being the best free throw shooting team in the country the last 2 years, which is a crazy stat when you think about it, especially with the turnover that the roster had. It's actually a credit to Kyle Neptune. I want to give him his flowers in this situation. I've talked to former players about this because it's something that interests me too. It's just such a random stat that you just wonder how it keeps happening. And I actually got some pretty insightful answers from a former player. He was telling me about how when they practice, they're prepared for any situation. So when they go up to the line, they know what they're going to do if they make it. They know what they're going to do if they miss it short. They know what they're going to do if they miss it long. And that preparation going up to the line, knowing no matter what happens, we have a plan for what we're going to do next. That kind of takes a lot of the pressure off when they're on the free throw line. And free throws, you can take any one of these guys on the team to your local park and they'll go 85 for 100 on the free throw line. And most Division I players, don't look up Enoch Boakye's stats from the free throw line last year, please. But you can take any one of these guys to the park and they'll knock down a bunch of free throws. But during the game, it's that pressure that gets to them, and they're so prepared in their practices that pressure's not really there for them in the game. That allows them to play a lot better, shoot a lot better.
Love that.
I'm happy you brought that up, Nick. That is unbelievable that they're number one 3 straight years with 2 different head coaches and plenty of different players. That is awesome. Well, hey, Villanova still has – you got to keep – I know Kyle Neptune hasn't really shown it, but I still think there's plenty of reasons to keep the light on of, Villanova has a good culture and they've got good players. And in the Big East, it's they're equipped with the tools necessary to compete in the Big East. We'll see if it comes together, but don't be surprised. There's a wide range of outcomes here, but there's a high ceiling and there's a low floor. For
sure. One last thing I wanted to bring up while we're on a positive note. I mean, last year Villanova was outstanding, at least in Ken Palm's defensive efficiency. Last year I knew that they were top 25 in the country. This offseason they brought in Jamie Young from the outside.
Yes, I had this in my notes. I wish I brought this up. Thank you. Continue.
You're welcome. So I think this is going to benefit them in more than one way. I mean, every single coach on Villanova's coaching staff prior to Jamie Young was from the Jay Wright coaching tree. So when crap hit the fan, nobody knew what to do. Everybody was always taught the same thing. Now they bring in Jamie Young from the outside. He's an NBA guy. He's a big offensive help. I know you guys did a show with Michael DeRosa, and the assistant coach's name is slipping my mind right now, but he talks about it, how they brought him in, and he completely revamped Butler's offense in 1 year. I'm not saying that's what Jamie Young is going to do at Villanova, but I think bringing in an outside guy who can offer a different opinion on what's right, what's best for the program when things go wrong, I think is going to be huge. I think he is going to be a big help, obviously, on the offensive side of the floor. It's going to be big. It's going to be big for Villanova.
Great note. Thank you, Tommy. You've been a great guest. Appreciate your knowledge and insight on this Villanova program, and I hope you have a more enjoyable year this season. You earn it. It's been too long since you've won the title and everything. So
I was spoiled growing up, so I kind of deserve this now. But better times are coming. But yeah, thank you guys both, Nick and Christian, for having me on. This was a great show.
Awesome. Thanks again, Tom.